This clip is largely pitched towards secondary teachers who are about to embark on one-to-one iPads in their classroom. My name's Andrew Scott. I'm a VCE psychology student who works at Sacré-Cœur in Melbourne, Australia, and I've done a bit of iPad training over the last couple of years. Just a bit of background. Our school in the heart of Melbourne, Australia, we're a smallish school, prepped to 12, and next year we will be one-to-one iPads in Year 9 and 10. This year, 2012, we will one-to-one in Year 9. We'll also have iPads in Years 5 and 6 next year for the second year. First of all, let's define what we mean by an iPad. Well, it was the first tablet computer developed by Apple. It's been on the market now for 3 years. In terms of its functionality, it's somewhere between a smartphone, an iPhone, and a laptop. Depending on how you use it, it can be more like a smartphone or more like a laptop if you're doing a lot of data entry, creating text, etc., using those iWork apps. Talk a bit about that later. So what can an iPad do? Well, broadly, we've got ebooks, movies that we can view, music, we can make music, etc. We can access web content. We can use it to create work, capture work, share work, etc. And I'll go into a bit more detail shortly. In terms of the best way to get value out of your iPads at school, I think you need to give students the control, and a good way of doing that is getting them to load all the apps on, give them an iTunes card, give them a book list of apps, etc. You're going to need to put financial constraints on that in terms of limiting how much your teachers can, I guess, enforce app buying, depending on your policies, etc. But again, get the kids to put the apps on. You need to obviously have a good Wi-Fi if you're not using 3G, and most schools in Melbourne are using Wi-Fi, and it gives a school a bit more control. But it's just imperative, given that depending on how many students in your school have got iPads, will your Wi-Fi system be able to handle mass use, particularly during those peak periods? AirPlay is going to be a real game changer in my opinion. I think this is really going to take iPad use to another level for teachers who really embrace it. I'm very excited to be working in a classroom next year with AirPlay, which means that I can literally, just through my one iPad, I can go through something like the structure of a neuron. I can hand around my iPad around the classroom, and I can get students to, say, annotate a different part of the neuron, etc., with the work being projected onto the screen. So I think there's massive potential there, particularly for sharing work, for annotating work, that type of thing, if teachers embrace it. I've come up with 5 categories of apps, and I'm going to go through these in terms of level of difficulty. So you've got your stock standard apps. Now the beauty of these apps is that they require no ICT knowledge. You can actually get students to open up their iPads, and from day one, without any knowledge from you, they'll be able to use these in a value-added sense. So your camera roll, already over the last year and a half that iPads have been in my classroom, or a couple, students will regularly come up and take a photo of what's on the class. Now think about this for, say, a maths class where you've gone through a complex problem, maybe a LOT class, French, an Asian language, etc., where there's a lot of text on the board. Students can take a photo of that. They can put it on the school portal, maybe their Facebook page, etc. So that is just a very practical way of actually gathering information that's been created in class. Your calendar app, well, imagine this. You as a teacher can send out a mass email to your class, all right, by dating an assignment when it's due, and if they click on that date, they'll have the option of creating an event, and that'll go into their calendar. So it makes them, it helps in terms of organisation for both teacher and student. Your iBooks, so think about it in terms of the potential for iPads to be cost neutral, because you can get students to basically have all their books on the one device, And once teachers get a little bit more advanced, in a couple of years we're going to have more teachers creating using iBooks or Author on their Macs to actually create very cheap textbooks. I'll be doing this next year in my Unit 1-2 class. I'm not going with a published book. I'm making my own iBook, and therefore that'll be a freebie to my class. So I'm literally saving every student about $70. Also, the fact that you've got a web browser. So anytime you're working in class on something that's, say, constructivist, inquiry-based learning, students can simply look up the web. They can look up the web even for things on like spelling, pronunciation of words, historical events, YouTube, etc. Massive, and again, no expertise on any of these required by the teacher. And then we've got the interactive apps, and this is where you need to get in your app store and see what you've got. If you actually just go in, so I'm a psychology teacher, and you just type in psychology apps, you'll find a bunch of paid ones and some really good freebie ones, like this brain app, which is very tactile. It's got a 3D perspective, you can rotate it, etc. It gives you information about brain structures, what happens when they're damaged, etc. So if you're a maths teacher, you could just type in free, once you're in the App Store, free maths apps, and you'll get literally hundreds of quite, well, relative, depending on what year level you teach, some useful apps, no doubt. And then you've got apps that you can actually create work on. Classic one that's getting a lot of use is in Australia anyway, is iMovie, where you can actually create a task. Students can then create a movie. I suggest putting them in groups. I think the key thing here is you really need to come up with a good criteria sheet in advance so the students are very clear on the outcomes expected. I'd also put in a criteria for, I guess, their work ethic, including all students in the groups, etc. So that you're not just marking them on the technology, but also the manner in which they've actually got to produce that work. UPad, big fan of this app. The fact that you can actually, it's a very good annotating app. So I know a few maths teachers have basically got worksheets that they've distributed through their Dropbox. Students access these, and then the teacher in real time literally annotates the actual problems in the space provided, and students follow along either on their iPad if they're that way inclined, or maybe on hard copy. If you're a visual learner, you might like a concept map app. This one here, iThoughts, that's $10. I've used it quite a bit. You can get cheaper ones. And Creative Book Builder, a good one. You can actually get, say, in English or humanities subject students to actually create work, and then they can actually basically, it literally, you can put in movies, photos, podcasts, etc. So again, a great app for students particularly in middle to upper secondary. And then we've got work that can be created and shared between iPad and PC. This is going to be an issue if you're not a Apple school. If you're Apple school, this is going to work seamlessly because you can have students on their MacBook creating work on Pages, Keynote or Numbers, and then through iCloud or some other format they can actually share that work. If you're a Windows school, you can create work on PowerPoint, and then it can be converted to a Keynote. There are some formatting issues, so something to be mindful of, particularly with Keynote and Pages. And then you've got work that you can create on a PC and then use it on an iPad app. Prezi, I'm using Prezi right now, so I've created that on my Mac, and then I've accessed that through my iPad, and through AirPlay I can present that to the class. Cram, this is a really good flash card app, etc., that you can make more efficiently the actual files which are used for revision purposes on your Mac or PC, and then again you can access these on either an iPhone or an iPad app. A couple of things to think about before you even go into the classroom. What are you going to do if your students are supposed to be working on a task and they're actually engaging in social media? So your school will have a policy for this. I suggest maybe even creating a contract just for your class, get the students to sign off. If they breach it, the first sanction might be taking the iPad off them for the lesson. So again, you've got to have contingencies in place for when students are doing the wrong thing. Likewise, games. What are you going to do when your student says, "I've done all my work, Miss or Mister"? Okay, so again, you need to be mindful of in advance. How are you going to handle that situation? All right, I hope this has been of use, and good luck with your students using their iPads in class.